Alex Rivera's first week at Hawthorne and Blake Industries had been a whirlwind. The sprawling, ultramodern office, with its floor-to-ceiling glass walls, polished marble floors, and gleaming metal accents, was a far cry from the modest classrooms and libraries he had known for the past 4 years. At 20 years old, fresh out of college, Alex was still learning the subtle choreography of corporate life, when to speak, when to observe, and when to fade into the background. He adjusted the strap of his messenger bag nervously as he walked down the long corridor to the CEO's office. He had been assigned to assist the executive team for the week, printing reports, organizing schedules, and handling other administrative tasks. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a foot in the door. He had been warned repeatedly that interns were to be useful, but invisible. The office floor was quiet, save for the distant hum of copiers and the faint chatter of assistants and managers. As Alex approached the door labeled CEO's office, he paused, taking a deep breath. His hand hovered over the polished handle, his mind rehearsing polite greetings, professional phrases, and all the things he shouldn't say. And then the door opened before he could knock. There she was. Isabella Delgado, the CEO's wife, stood in the doorway like a vision pulled straight from a magazine cover. Blonde, tall, and impossibly poised, she wore a crisp white blouse tucked into a sleek black pencil skirt that emphasized her curves without appearing overt. Her long hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders, golden strands catching the sunlight streaming through the window. Her green eyes met his, sharp, knowing, and tinged with amusement. Alex froze mid-step. "Gee, good morning, Mrs. Hawthorne," he managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Please, call me Isabella," she said smoothly, her smile confident but teasing. "You must be Alex, the new intern." He nodded, shifting his weight nervously from foot to foot. "Yes, ma'am. That's me. I've been assigned to assist your husband this week." Isabella tilted her head, her eyes glinting with curiosity. "Ah, yes. I've noticed you around. I thought it would be interesting to meet the person who will be spending so much time near my husband." Alex's pulse quickened. The warmth in her tone, the slight teasing quality in her voice, made his heart race. I'll do my best to be helpful," he said, hoping he sounded calm and professional. She stepped into the office fully, closing the door behind her. "Helpfulness is appreciated," she said, moving toward the large mahogany desk. "But I'm more interested in seeing the person behind the title." Alex blinked, uncertain how to respond. "The person behind the title?" "Yes," Isabella said, leaning against the edge of the desk. She crossed her arms, her green eyes never leaving his. "I don't often get to meet the young people who enter this building, especially interns. Most are either terrified, overly eager, or completely indifferent. You seem different. Curious, observant, attentive." Alex swallowed hard. I try to pay attention," he admitted. "I want to learn as much as I can while I'm here." "Good," Isabella said, taking a step closer. "Because I want you to see things differently, too." Alex's chest tightened. There was something in her tone, a subtle command layered with flirtation, that made him acutely aware of the space between them. He reminded himself, she was married, he was an intern, and this could not become personal. And yet, he couldn't stop his gaze from following her every movement. "Come in my husband's office," Isabella said suddenly, her voice soft but insistent. "I want to show you something privately." Alex blinked, taken aback. Okay," he managed, stepping further inside. The door clicked shut behind him, and the air seemed to thicken instantly. The office, with its tall leather chairs, polished desk, and framed degrees on the wall, felt smaller, charged with a tension he could feel in his chest. Isabella moved closer, the subtle sway of her hips and the gentle fragrance of her perfume making it impossible to focus. "Relax," she said, almost whispering. "I don't bite." Alex swallowed hard. I just want to be professional," he said, his voice faltering slightly. "Professional is boring," Isabella said, leaning lightly against the desk. "I like human. I want to see the real you, Alex. Not the intern who carries files, but the one standing here, nervous as hell." Alex's throat went dry. I'm not sure I'm ready for that." Ready or not, here we are, she said, stepping closer, her eyes gleaming with something he couldn't identify but felt deeply. And besides, it's a lesson in honesty, in being seen. Something I think you'll need in this building. Her presence was magnetic. Every step she took, every subtle tilt of her head, made him aware of her proximity, the warmth radiating from her, the intoxicating scent that seemed to fill the room. His rational mind told him to maintain distance, to remember the lines that could not be crossed. But every instinct in his body drew him closer. "Why me?" he asked quietly, almost a whisper. "Because you're genuine," she said softly. "I see it in your eyes. You're different from the others, Alex. And sometimes, I like to see what happens when someone new walks into my orbit." The tension between them was palpable. Alex's heart thudded in his chest. He wanted to retreat, to remind himself that she was off limits. But the way she leaned toward him, the playful curve of her lips, made retreat impossible. "Sit," Isabella said, gesturing toward the chair behind the desk. Alex hesitated, then obeyed. The moment he sat, the air between them felt electric, charged with anticipation. Isabella's gaze held his, unflinching, as she stepped closer. "You're brave," she said softly. "Most men your age would be fumbling over their words. You handle it well. I like that." Alex felt heat rise to his cheeks. I'm just trying not to screw up," he admitted, his voice low. "You're doing more than that," she murmured. "You're present. You're alive in the moment. And that's rare." The office seemed to shrink around them. The polished floors, the mahogany desk, the framed degrees, all faded into the background. It was just him and her, connected in a way that neither could deny, despite the boundaries and the rules of the world outside. Minutes passed like hours. Every glance, every movement, every word was charged. Alex couldn't stop noticing her, the way her lips curved when she smiled, the sparkle in her eyes, the subtle sway of her posture. Isabella, too, seemed aware of his attention, her gaze softening yet never faltering, teasing yet not cruel. "You have a way of making things less stressful," she said softly, her voice almost intimate. Alex's chest tightened. I don't want this to be complicated," he admitted. "It already is," she whispered, stepping closer, the air between them electric. "And yet it's undeniable. Some things can't be ignored, Alex. Some sparks have to be felt." Alex swallowed hard, his pulse racing. Every word Isabella spoke felt like an invitation and a warning at the same time. He was painfully aware of the line he shouldn't cross, yet the pull toward her was almost irresistible. He wanted to speak, to protest, to remind himself she was married. But the words got caught in his throat, lost beneath the magnetic tension she created with each subtle movement. "Alex," Isabella said softly, tilting her head, "I want you to understand something. Life in this building, life in this city, it's full of expectations. People wear masks. They hide behind power, money, and appearances. But moments like this, moments when someone sees you for who you really are, they don't happen often. And when they do," she trailed off, letting her gaze linger, her lips curling in a teasing, almost mischievous smile. Alex's throat went dry. "And when they do," he prompted, barely able to speak. "You don't forget them," she whispered, "no matter how hard you try." He could feel her presence closer now, the subtle warmth radiating from her, the soft scent of her perfume enveloping him. His heart thundered in his chest. Every instinct told him to step back, to retreat into reason, but the magnetic pull of her gaze, her voice, her mere existence in the room made stepping back impossible. "You're dangerous," he said quietly, more to himself than to her. "And yet," she murmured, leaning lightly against the desk, "you're still here, listening, feeling, present. That's the part one liked the most." Alex's hands tightened on the arms of the chair. His rational mind screamed that this was wrong, that he was risking everything. And yet, the way she looked at him, the softness in her eyes beneath the playful glint, made him want to throw caution to the wind. Isabella took a deliberate step closer, narrowing the distance between them. "I can see it in your eyes, Alex," she said, her voice low, intimate. "You're curious about me. About this moment. Don't lie. He swallowed, the room suddenly impossibly small. I can't help it, he admitted. I've never met anyone like you. A soft laugh escaped her lips, warm and melodic. Nor have I, Alex, she said, letting her gaze linger. That's exactly why this is exciting, dangerous, and intoxicating. The words sent a shiver down his spine. He knew that what was happening was impossible. She was married, untouchable, a figure of power and allure, and yet the pull between them was undeniable. The room seemed to shrink until there was nothing but the tension, the chemistry, the silent acknowledgement of what they were both feeling. Isabella, he began, his voice barely audible. Shoo, she said, placing a finger lightly against his lips. Not yet. Don't rush. Feel. Experience this moment without thinking. That's when things get real. He obeyed, his breathing shallow as he absorbed the intensity of her presence. Her eyes held his, green and piercing, yet soft with something he couldn't quite name. Her proximity, the gentle sway of her body, the intoxicating scent, all combined into a potent mix that made him dizzy. Minutes passed like an eternity. Words were no longer necessary. The tension, the electricity, the subtle brush of her hand against his arm as she adjusted her stance, they said everything without needing to speak. Every glance, every small movement, amplified the connection between them. Alex realized, with a mixture of awe and fear, that this was more than infatuation. It was a spark, an undeniable, electric attraction that neither time nor circumstance could fully erase. He had never felt anything like it before, not in college, not with friends, not with anyone. And the fact that she was here, in the same room, fully aware of its power, made every heartbeat thunder in his chest. You're trembling, Isabella said softly, noting the subtle tension in his hands. It's nothing, he lied, though the truth was written all over him. It's not nothing, she said, her voice a gentle tease. It's desire, curiosity, fear, excitement, all of it. And I see it, Alex. I see it in every inch of you. The intensity of her gaze, the softness of her words, made him momentarily forget where he was, who she was, and what was right. He was 20, inexperienced, and utterly captivated by a woman who carried herself with a mix of authority and playful danger. And yet, he wanted more moments like this, more glances, more stolen touches, more connection. Isabella smiled knowingly, sensing the turmoil within him. Do you want to know a secret? She asked, leaning closer, so close that he could see the subtle shimmer in her eyes. Alex nodded, unable to speak. I enjoy this, she admitted softly. The curiosity, the tension, the thrill of connecting with someone who isn't expecting it. Someone fresh, someone real. You, Alex, are real. That's why I've chosen this moment to speak with you. His chest tightened. I don't know what to say, he whispered. Then don't say anything, she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, her hand trailing almost imperceptibly close to his. Just feel. Just be present. That's all I ask. The air in the office seemed to thrum with anticipation. The polished floor, the leather chairs, the framed awards, all faded into the background. It was just Alex and Isabella, caught in a moment that was impossible, electrifying, and intoxicating. And then, suddenly, the sound of a phone ringing somewhere in the office broke the spell. Isabella's gaze flicked toward the sound, then back to him. Her lips curled into a teasing smile. Reality has a way of intruding, she murmured, even in the most extraordinary moments. Alex exhaled slowly, feeling the intensity of the encounter linger. He stood, feeling both exhilarated and conflicted. I should probably go, he said quietly, though every part of him wanted to stay. Isabella's eyes softened, and she reached out, lightly brushing her fingers against his arm. A fleeting touch, but enough to make his pulse spike. Yes, for now, she whispered. But remember, Alex, first impressions matter. Yours has left an impression. He nodded, his chest tight, and stepped toward the door. The hallway outside the office was stark, brightly lit, and impossibly normal compared to the charged intimacy of the room he had just left. Every step he took echoed in his mind. The sound of her laughter, the warmth of her gaze, the subtle magnetism that had drawn him in. And Isabella, watching him retreat, allowed herself a private smile. The encounter had been brief, yet it had ignited something neither of them could deny. A spark. A dangerous, intoxicating spark that would linger long after the office lights dimmed. The days that followed were both ordinary and extraordinary. Alex threw himself into his tasks, running errands, delivering files, and attending meetings with careful attention. On the surface, everything seemed professional. He smiled at colleagues, nodded politely to executives, and took meticulous notes. But beneath it all, his mind kept returning to that morning. Isabella's smile, the way her eyes had held his, the quiet intimacy of the office. It wasn't just attraction, it was a connection, one that defied logic, rules, and reason. Then it happened again. Alex was delivering a set of reports to the executive floor when he saw her in the hallway, leaning casually against the wall outside her husband's office. Isabella Delgado. Her presence was magnetic, as if the world bent around her. She looked up, her green eyes locking onto his, and her lips curved in that teasing, knowing smile. "Alex," she said softly, almost a whisper, "I wondered when I'd see you again." He paused, his chest tightening. I'm just delivering these," he said, holding the folder a little too tightly. She stepped closer, the subtle sway of her hips hypnotic. "I know, but I thought maybe we could talk." For a moment, Alex's pulse surged. "Okay," he said, following her into the quiet corner near the elevators. She leaned lightly against the wall, arms crossed, studying him. "You handled yourself well the other day," she said softly. "In my husband's office. Most young men would have been a trembling mess, but you stood your ground. It was impressive." Alex's face heated. I didn't mean to. I was just—" "Being yourself," she interrupted gently, her eyes holding his. "Yes, that's exactly what I meant, and it intrigued me." He swallowed hard. He wanted to speak, to tell her that he felt the same pull, the same tension, the same fascination, but words failed him. She was married, untouchable, yet every instinct in his body urged him forward, toward the dangerous thrill of connection. "You're thinking too much," she said suddenly, stepping closer. Her voice was a soft command, intimate and teasing. "Just feel. Be present. That's what matters." He nodded, breath shallow. The space between them felt charged, electric. Every subtle movement, every glance, every inflection of her voice carried weight he could barely comprehend. Minutes passed. The hallway was empty, the office quiet. And yet, time seemed suspended. Alex could feel the magnetic pull, the unspoken tension that made his chest tight, his palms sweaty, his mind whirl. "Do you ever feel like life is full of moments you can't predict?" Isabella asked softly, her voice close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her. "Moments that are dangerous, exciting, and intoxicating all at once." Alex nodded slowly. "Yes, I think I do." She smiled, a slow, teasing curve of her lips that made his pulse spike. "Good. That's what I like to hear. You understand me more than you realize." And then, almost imperceptibly, she reached out, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Her fingers lingered close to his arm, just enough to make his heart pound faster. "You're brave, Alex," she murmured, "and I'd admire that, even though it's reckless." He swallowed, feeling the tension escalate. I don't know if I should be feeling this," he admitted quietly. "Neither do I," she said softly. "But that's the point. Sometimes the most intense connections are the ones you're not supposed to have." The words hung in the air, charged and intimate. Alex wanted to step closer, to bridge the distance, to feel the heat of her presence fully. But reason reminded him she was married, the CEO's wife, untouchable. And yet, he couldn't move. Not entirely. Not when her gaze held him so completely. Days passed with stolen glances, subtle touches, and private moments of conversation that were both innocent and charged with unspoken desire. Alex found himself constantly aware of her presence, imagining what it would feel like to reach out, to hold her hand, to brush against her just once. And Isabella, too, seemed to walk the line between propriety and temptation, teasing him with her words, her expressions, her very presence. One afternoon, as the office hummed quietly around them, Isabella called him into her husband's office again. The elevator ride was tense, both of them unusually quiet, their unspoken thoughts heavy in the air. When the doors opened, she gestured toward the chair. "Sit," she said softly, a mischievous glint in her eyes. Alex obeyed, heart racing. She moved closer, resting a hand lightly on the desk near his. "Do you know why I like these moments, Alex?" she asked, voice low and intimate. "Because in them we're free. Free from expectations, from rules, from eyes that judge. Free to be ourselves." He swallowed, feeling the weight of her words, the intensity of her presence. I understand," he whispered. She smiled knowingly. "Good. That's all I ask. Be present. Feel. Don't think too much. And maybe, just maybe, we'll discover something extraordinary." And in that charged silence, Alex realized something undeniable. He was captivated, not just by her beauty, her confidence, or her allure, but by the moments they shared, the connection that was both forbidden and irresistible. It was dangerous, yes. Reckless, yes. But it was real. The weeks continued, each day building the tension between them. They exchanged private glances across conference rooms, brief touches in hallways, and moments of laughter and conversation that deepened the connection without crossing overt lines. Every interaction was a test, a dance, a thrilling game of restraint and desire. One evening, after the office had emptied, Isabella called him into the office once more. The air was quiet, the city lights casting a soft glow through the windows. Alex felt a shiver run down his spine as she stepped closer, the tension between them almost unbearable. "You've been remarkable," she said softly. "In every way. Attentive, curious, genuine. And I enjoy our moments together more than I should." Alex's chest tightened. "I feel the same," he admitted, voice low. "Every time we talk, every time we're near, I can't stop thinking about it." She smiled a slow, intimate smile. "That's exactly why this is so dangerous and so irresistible." Their eyes met, the intensity between them impossible to ignore. The world outside the office, the CEO, the rules, the expectations, faded away. There was only this moment, charged with electricity, desire, and unspoken understanding. Alex felt a surge of courage, a desire to close the distance, to feel the warmth of her presence fully. Isabella's hand brushed his arm lightly, a gentle spark that set his pulse racing. "Do you want this?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly, betraying her own inner conflict. Yes," he admitted, almost breathless. "But I know we can't." "Sometimes," she murmured, stepping closer, "you have to let go of rules and just feel." And in that suspended moment, forbidden and intoxicating, Alex and Isabella shared a quiet, electric connection, one that would linger in their hearts, dangerous, thrilling, and utterly unforgettable. Because sometimes, the most extraordinary moments were the ones you weren't supposed to have.